Welcome everybody to the Canadian Creative Accelerator Black Music Managers cohort. And my name is David Cox, and I'm just going to start with a quick land acknowledgement video for everybody.
We acknowledge we are hosted on the lands of the Mississaugas of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Wendat. We also recognize the enduring presence of all First Nations, Métis, and the Inuit peoples.
Thank you. My name is David Cox, and I also have Matthew McDonald here. Agenda for the day. As you can see, we have a bunch of things to talk about for this accelerator program, and I'm just going to dive in because it's a full package we have with you. And at the end of the day, we'll also open up for Q&A. So if you have any questions, please feel free to share in the chat. And I'm going to start by introducing myself. My name is David Cox, also known as Click, and I am the co-founder of BDRB, which stands for Breaking Down Racial Barriers. My partner, Andre Espinay, and myself have been doing a lot of work in regards to eradicating anti-Black racism in our industry. This has been done by a series of trainings, anti-Black racism report that was created, a declaration signing, and many other things we've been able to do. What I would recommend is logging on to www.bdrb.ca to learn more about what we're doing and what we've done and what we continue to do. And one of the things we've done last year was work with the Canadian Consulate on a Black music manager's export mission. And I will throw to my partner host in crime here, Matt McDonald, who can share a little bit about the CCA and his role.
Thanks, Click. Yes, I'm Matt McDonald. I'm a trade commissioner here at the Canadian Consulate in New York, and I focus on the creative industries. And for our purpose today, music is one of those. And we have been doing these creative accelerators for a couple of years now, focusing on different parts of the industry. And it's really designed to help Canadian clients who we define as Canadian businesses that have an established track record domestically in Canada, who are looking to expand in the near future to the US market. So this program really, what's that?
I was going to say, and this program is exclusively focused on music managers and self-managed artists, correct?
Yeah, this one is specifically for Black music managers. And we can get into who qualifies probably quickly, but the basic idea of the program is to connect you with U.S. industry in a very sort of concentrated way, where you have one-on-one access to whether it's A&R people, publishers, agents, DSPs. It really depends on sort of what your goals are and who we can kind of connect you with. But the idea is basically we'll ultimately pick 6 companies, 6 managers for this high intensity program over the next 3 months. Right.
And you just kind of briefly went over some of the things, but maybe you want to talk about a little bit more about the overview in regards like how the targets, what are the goals, what do you expect in terms of anticipated outcomes, objectives, and program policies within the program quickly.
Sure. So ultimately, my job is to help Canadian businesses, increase their business activity here. And so that, in an ideal world, it's like, oh, there's a contract that happens, whether it's a label deal, a publishing deal, a live booking agent that you get connected to that then, develops your touring career stateside. Those are really the outcomes that we are targeting. And so the way we do that is putting you in touch with the people that are most likely to help you.
So, any applicant that comes to the table, they should definitely have an idea of like what their goals are, and those goals could be different from one another. Like one manager could have a different goal than another manager. They don't all have to have the same dreams and aspirations for their business.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, really, the goal is the most successful candidates are going to be the ones who can say, okay, these are my top two priorities for the next year and a half. I'm really seeking, a U.S. booking agent because we've done really well in Canada. We've had a few U.S. dates, and we're really looking to build on that. Or, we are really looking at A&R reps from these three labels. As opposed to, well, we just kind of want to meet new people. It's really about thinking where your artist is currently and where you want the artist to be, in the near future, whether that's a year from now, 6 months from now, 2 years from now. That's really important.
And what do you look for in terms of outcomes? Like, what's the anticipated outcomes that you're looking for?
Basically,
In regards,
sorry. Deals are really where is like the best outcome, but I know, some of these things are long term. So even starting conversations that may not lead anywhere immediately, but at least open some doors to eventual deals, or meeting one person who then puts you in touch with another one. That looks like a success to me too. I mean, we have very specific sort of goals that we don't need to get into here, but there's economic outcome facilitated, there's opportunities pursued, there's basically, even if a negotiation starts and doesn't get completed, that's a good outcome for us too.
Well, going back to, I guess, some of the details, what can people anticipate if they are selected? And in this trip is specifically for a New York export mission. Maybe you could talk about what they can expect if they are selected in the program.
Sure. So there'll be a few virtual sessions in advance of the New York in-person piece. I expect those will take place in February. There'll also be some mentorship by U.S. industry veterans, where they can help you craft your pitching, because I think a lot of times people will come in and it's a lot of pleasantries, and then by the time the allotted time for the meeting is up, you haven't actually gotten to your request. So I think we'll do some pitching to help really get you sharp on that front. And then there'll be some introductions for one-on-one meetings that happen. And then for the actual New York piece, it'll be basically 3 days. And again, it'll be some group sessions. It'll be some one-on-ones. I'm hoping that most of the New York activity is music pitching opportunities, but no guarantees until we know who's participating and whatnot. And the other thing that we're doing this year is partnering with MMF Canada. So they are doing a export mission to New York. It's going to coincide with the CCA. So basically, March 4th, 5th, and 6th are the target dates. And if you are selected to participate in the CCA, you're automatically part of the Music Managers Forum mission. Right. And they are offering.
Well, we'll get to that.
We'll get to that. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself, but basically, it'll be 3 days of programming here in New York.
Great. So that breaks down exactly what people can anticipate in terms of the program. Maybe you could talk about who can apply. You did mention already it would be managers, self-identified Black artists as well, Black music managers, but also artists that are self-managed. I would like to maybe talk a little bit more about that, just so people understand, like, what does that mean? Like,
Yeah.
you're looking for registered businesses? How does, yeah, maybe you can explain a little bit further here.
Yeah. So and it's always a little tricky with the creative industries because, you're dealing with artists and the self-managed artists. As long as they have a company, a registered business, then they would be eligible. If that's not the case, then unfortunately you wouldn't qualify. And I think, there's probably other reasons to consider registering as a business, aside from this, just for, long term. But you do have to be an actual business, even if it's a one person shop.
Mhm.
That's pretty, non-negotiable.
In the land of some managers, some artists might have registered business, but they also might have like a hired consultant or a hired manager kind of that basically is representing for them. Is that a possibility in that scenario? That they have that person coming to represent them? And if they were to do that, if that is allowed, does that person have to be Black identifying as well then?
Um,
Or does the artist have to be the person attending? That's what I would like to know. If an artist that is self-managing gets through and is considered for the program, do they have to be the one attending is what I'm getting
yes, they do.
at. Okay, good. And this is open to companies that also don't just manage artists, they can manage writers, producers, that, like, if a manager has a roster, it's open to all different types of creatives, correct?
Yep, that's right.
And do the companies have to prove any like recent financial or creative viability to their business? And if so, how?
Yeah, I mean, on the application is pretty straightforward, I think. And I think it's important to look at the questions and think about what the jury is going to be considering because um, succinct and informative are both, I think, really important. And because we want to see that, both the manager and the roster of artists that they represent they have a track record basically. So in the application, I don't have it in front of me, but you really want to convey, this artist, here's my top three artists. This is what they've done over the last 3 years, whether it's recorded, whether it's touring, whether it's collaborations, things like that.
Yeah,
That was,
one thing I would like to share just with our audience right now is I think it's really important that you don't be uh uh lackadaisical in regards to like showing your wins. It's super important because it's a highly competitive application and program. And you know, if you've had some wins with your artist, share them. Don't just say, "Oh yeah, I did a tour." Like, explain where you did the tour, how successful that tour was. Oh, you had some syncs. Well, where were those syncs? What shows were those syncs on? What type of revenue increase have you had as a company? You know what I mean? Like, if you had, oh, I received over $100,000 in sync revenues in 2023. Like, that's the type of stuff that you're looking for, correct?
yep, that's perfect. Yep. Very
Awesome.
specific and succinct is good too.
Great. And maybe we can share our deadlines for the application.
Yep. Applications open today and they will close in 2 weeks, basically Sunday, the 17th of December at 11:59 p.m. I don't think we'll be extending the deadline at all, just because we have some schedule pressures. But once you have a chance to look at it, I think you'll see it's fairly straightforward. I would recommend taking a look at it today when you can, this weekend maybe, and then think about how you want to formulate your answers. And then first week of January, we'll have an announcement of who's going to participate.
And I would just say to people, don't think it's a first come, first served basis. Like, oh, I got to get my application in right away. I think like what Matt was just saying was it's super important to put your best foot forward and just make sure you're putting together a strong application. Just to go around the application process and some of the things that are highlighted in that application, just so you're aware, obviously company information, but this is where the government wants to make sure that they have, registered businesses. Like you have to include your business number, and obviously have your social handles, your name, a short description about your company and yourself. I think it's important to share, let's say, for example, you might have just started a management company, but you've been working in the music industry. Maybe you worked in other areas, be it you were a promoter or you were worked at a record company or whatever the case may be. That still brings value to like the individual that you are, and I think that's important to highlight. Um, any other elements here you want to talk about?
No, I can't remember where just in terms of how the judges are going to be looking at these.
Yeah, that's coming up next.
That's next. Yeah, I mean, I think it's important just to note, as managers, I think the tendency is always to look at your roster and what your roster has achieved. I think it's also important and how do you distinguish the two between them, what they've done and what you've done? But highlighting what you've done as a manager is very important. So consider that as well as what your artists have done. If that makes sense.
And as you can see, some more type of questions that are here are, talking about what type of experience you've had in the US. How important that is that for this type of program, Matt? Like, is it important that like managers and their artists have had some type of track record?
I think it's important that there's at least some awareness. The goal is really to expand your US business. So if you already have, made some attempts, even if they haven't been super successful, it's good to know that because it gives us an idea that you have a sense of the territory at least. And, sometimes you have an artist who's really kind of blowing up and it's just been Canada has been the focus. I'd say, let us know that's why you haven't really done anything in the US. It's like focus has been very much on the domestic side of things. And now it's time to head.
Step up.
Yeah.
To level up. I think one of the other elements I just want to highlight in this application question is when there's usually something in the application that talks about like who would you like to meet, what type of individuals that you would like to meet for furthering your business further and the artists you work with further. I think it's really important that you don't just say a publicist, an agent, a manager, a label, because there's already a question that asks that question, right? So I think when that question's asked is really asking like, do you know individuals? Like, oh, this particular person at this company, I want to meet because of this. Like if you can show that you have a tenacity of like certain players and why that player is important to your meeting and think about being in New York City, that will also bring value because it shows that you kind of have a target in mind and you know what you're chasing. Our next screen here is how are the participants being judged on? So I'll let you explain this, Matt.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. It's the strength of your management profile, and there's some examples there of what that looks like. Secure tour opportunities, grant funding, placements, etc. Strength of your roster of artists is also very important, and that's why we look to see those key sales and streaming figures, social media, touring experience, etc. The likelihood of success in the U.S. market is big also, and again, demonstrating that you have experience, have some connections, you maybe already have some partnerships in the States. Relevance comes into play because, I think we're looking at people who are able to capitalize on recent success as opposed to, some legacy type of business. And then there's the DEI intersectionality. Just it will be, we'll take into account gender, LGBTQ, geographical. We tend to see a lot of Ontario and Quebec for obvious reasons. It helps to have a little bit of diversity outside of just the Black category.
Awesome.
And that's pretty much it.
Great. So next, I'm going to invite our past participants that were in this program in 2022 to screen, which would be Katrina and Buck. If you guys could join now, that would be awesome. I guess we'll just take you guys off mute and turn on your cameras. Okay. You should be able to be unmuted there, Buck. I don't know what's happening.
Can you hear me?
You're there? Okay, awesome.
Yes.
Thank you both for being with us today. I think it's really important that people that are here with us right now can hear about what the experience was like for past participants that were in this program. So for everybody who's just maybe walked in the room, we did this program in 2022. We had 65 participants, actually 65 applicants apply for this, and 8 companies were selected. And Kat and Buck were 2 of the individuals that came, and as Buck is from Vancouver, Kat is from Toronto, but also Halifax. She represents, and I'd just like to start. Either one of you can answer this. Why do you believe the export missions like this are important, especially for being a black person in this country? You know what I mean? One of you can start.
You catch to go first?
Yeah.
Sure, go ahead. Oh, sorry. I thought you said, do you want to start first? Yes.
I'm going to throw to Kat. Go ahead, Kat.
Yeah. I've done some other trade missions where I have just felt like they were not that useful for me because they were quite focused on like indie and folk. And so the meetings were based around managers and companies. Sometimes it was managers and labels that were mostly representing folk and indie rock. So I just feel like the majority of the trade missions out there have been biased in that way. So to have one that was specifically for us, for the genres that we're working in, I think is really impactful. There's also not that many of us in terms of like Black music managers in Canada. So it's also just a great opportunity for us to build with each other. So yeah.
Can you add to that? Like, what did you find beneficial of this export mission?
There was a few different things. So like Kat mentioned, even the opportunity to network with other Black music professionals in Canada was a huge one. And a lot of those relationships, you still maintain and you kind of work together in the future. Another one was just exposure to the different players out in the States, different people out in the industry. It really gives more perspective, and I think helps equip you to understand how to navigate certain markets, or if you have specific goals, how to reach those goals, and kind of talk to people that are doing it at the highest level. So yeah, I think those are the things that I got the most from the program.
And how did you guys prepare for this expert program in advance? I'm curious, like what were some advice that you could give to somebody who is going to possibly get into this type of program? Buck.
Yeah. A few different things. I think for me, it was understanding what my goals were, what part of my business did I want to grow, and understanding who's going to be involved in the program, who are the speakers, and then writing notes and kind of doing research on each person. What do they do? Where does that fit in terms of like our goals and our intentions, and being more mindful in those meetings, on those one-to-ones, and kind of coming into it prepared. So there was a lot of research in terms of the speakers and the opportunities and the people that you'd be coming across. And that translates well when you're having a conversation with someone and they can tell that you've done some research. You kind of know what they do and what they specialize in. Because even if they want to help, if you're not giving them the context to help you, it won't be as fruitful. So I'd say, yeah, do your research, understand who you want to connect with, be very intentional about who you want to connect with. And, when the team is like, okay, who do you want to meet? For the most part, they can, they go really hard at getting those people. So it's not just a random, like, oh, like, who would you like to talk to? If you're really intentional about it, there's a good chance that you'll be able to connect with who you want to connect with.
Pat, usually to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just everything that Buck said, and then in terms of research, I once we got the list of people we were meeting with, I immediately added everybody on Instagram and turned on notifications just so that I'd have an awareness of kind of what they're doing like currently and what they're working on. And because I think like bios are helpful, but sometimes they're like irrelevant because like sometimes people just have a bio that they've been using for 2 years that doesn't really capture the actual projects that they're working on like right now. And so sometimes if someone is active on social media, I find that that's a bit of a better gauge of how we could potentially work together. And then also just like setting up things, knowing that I was going to, I mean, when we did our trip, it was New York and LA. So knowing that I was going to be in both of those places, like setting up other things, connecting with people who I already have connections with, just to help bolster what we were already doing.
So in regards to pitching, I think I would love to hear any tips that you might be able to obviously doing research like you both mentioned is helpful, but is there any tips you can provide from the experience in just how they're set up in terms of having like there's the virtual element that Matt was talking about, and then there's the in-person element. They're two different types of things, and maybe you want to talk about how do you utilize your time to pitch in those type of settings, you know? Kat, you want to speak about that first?
I don't feel like I was pitching. So
Okay.
like that was not my goal wasn't to pitch. My goal was to I mean share like who I am, what I'm doing, what my roster is up to. But that wasn't my priority wasn't to like go in and drop a pitch. It was to like create a relationship or like plant a seed of a relationship and find out what they were working on and find ways that I could help them achieve what they were working on or doing, and try to find like connections. So I don't think I wasn't pitching
I'm,
per se.
and I'm happy you said that because I think that that is a strategy approach to pitching. Do you know what I mean? Like some people look at it's all about the relationships that you foster first. Do you know what I'm saying? And I think like that's a really great approach is like not just walking in a room and trying to sell, 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 but it's more like you're trying to build a relationship so that you can foster it into something.
Yeah, 100%.
Buck?
Mm. I would say the approach for me really depended on the person that I was talking to, because I found that there's certain people that are like, this is what I do, this is what I can do, what do you want? Obviously not as blunt, but they're very just straightforward.
Actually,
And there's other people,
some are that blunt too, though.
yeah, some were that blunt. And then the other people, they're like, this is who I am, this is my story. So I would basically just kind of understand what type of person I'm talking to. And if I'm talking to someone that just wants, okay, what are we doing? Okay, it's that approach. And then other people, similar to like what Kat said, is just like building the relationship. Because there's still people that I met there that I talked to today. We've never really done any business, but we just kind of built a good rapport. So I think it's about balance. And for me, it was about understanding each person individually and kind of like tailoring the conversation to that. Because I would say generally Americans are more aggressive. Obviously, that's a big generalization, but they don't hold back in terms of this is what I've done, this is who I am. And I think for them to be of value in the context of what you want to do, you kind of have to match that at the same level because they want to know, like, hey, if I'm going to put you in touch with someone, if I'm going to provide this opportunity, you need to be confident enough that you can handle it. So they kind of want a straightforward, this is what I'm capable of. These are the past achievements. This is how I think we could work together, or this is how I could benefit from XYZ, or this is the value I think I could provide.
And you talked about our past mission had was in New York and also in LA, and there were some other components that were also aligned with those beyond just virtual and in person. There's also a songwriting camp. There was a lot of different things that were going on. Maybe there you could talk about some standout things that you guys got from the mission for yourselves individually that you found as just stand out significant impacts for yourself. Buck?
There's a few. I think was fortunate to make a lot of great relationships, both with the participants, as in like everyone else in the program, as well as the people that we met. And a lot of those people that I guess I met we ended up doing business in one way or another, whether it was like on an artist, on a campaign, or even with the music tech company that we've been building. Someone that I met through that program originally ended up being an advisor to the company and introducing us to like investors and a bunch of other people. So I'm not sure if that really answers the question. It's kind of like, yeah, built a lot of great relationships, but both personally and professionally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the same. I don't have like a standout moment, but I think yeah, I mean, I don't have much more to add. Mostly like the relationship.
I mean, one thing that you have, like, I mean, beyond like in your consulting business that you do, I know that you've built some relationships with a lot of those people that you've actually ended up, working with and bringing back into things that you're doing. Do you know what I mean? Like, so I think to me, without having long discussions with you about it, but I see that as a standout thing. Like you built some strong relationships that have definitely benefited you.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I wasn't thinking of it as in that context of that question of like a standout moment for me individually. I think, yeah, I mean, there's been things that we've done. I think, I mean, I've worked with people, I've networked, I've worked with people, we've done a lot of collaborations. I mean, those were all outcomes.
Hmm.
Are you looking for more?
Right. No, I think it's great. I really want people that are joining us and watching this video to just understand the way that these programs can actually benefit them and what they can gain out of it. And with the songwriting camp, I think was really one of the big wins that I really saw happen from a standpoint of not just the artists collaborating with one another, but actually seeing that some of those songs actually got placed with some of the artists that were there, like have actually come out on people's albums, and there's been success stories around it. I guess what other advice can you give to anybody right now at this point in regards to future participants that want to be part of this program? Is there anything else you would love to add here? Kat?
I think, I mean, so you guys talked about this a bit earlier, how there's different components of like the virtual and then the in-person. And I would just say, at least for me, like I met with everyone, even if I didn't immediately know how I could work with them. Because you just never know kind of like what the connection could be. I found that with most of my conversations, again, getting back to people's bios, like their bios in some ways were, it was good for research, but like that wasn't necessarily what they were working on and wasn't the common denominator for us. So I'll give an example. Steve-O, who I met on the virtual, he wasn't in the in-person. He was someone we met with virtually. and his bio was a United Masters bio because he was working at United Masters. So, I mean, it's cool to meet with someone from United Masters that wasn't super relevant for me at the time. All my artists were signed. But he also co-manages OG Parker. And so I've created a relationship with him since then. I've brought him out to Scotia. Like, I don't think an emerging artist from North Preston would have been in the studio with OG Parker without having participated in this program. So let's like, don't discount just a 20-minute, or not even, I don't even think they were 20 minutes, I think they were 15 minutes. Like, don't discount a 15-minute virtual meeting based on what someone's bio says, because there could be something like way more valuable once you start talking. And then, I mean, it didn't happen immediately. It wasn't like we had this 15-minute conversation. It's like, oh, can I get into like, I built that relationship, but like the seed was planted there. And I think he was open to it because we were part of this program. And I think everyone that kind of came to the program, which is really important, like the consultant was really important in this case, and that everyone that she brought to the table was open to actually working with us.
Buck,
can you repeat the question?
Is there any other advice that you would have for future participants outside of what we've spoken about? Maybe unexpected lessons that you can share or insights gained from just doing this, you know?
Yeah, I mean, also there's so many, because the program isn't only just about, you know, like networking and talking to people. All the time, like they're telling their stories, they're telling you kind of how they built what they built, or kind of the function of their role. So I think it just helped deepen my knowledge, I guess, of the industry, by listening to people's stories and kind of understanding their path. So there was a lot of insights in that context, and also just understanding the dynamics of how different the industry is in the States and in Canada, and kind of some of the things that they do right over there versus some of the things that we do right over here. So I think it gave me just a wider knowledge base.
I'll add one more thing. I mean, for me, it was just as important to create relationships with the people who were on the trade mission, like with the Canadians, as it was the people that we were meeting in the US. And so I wouldn't discount that as well. Like, it's a great opportunity to really build relationships with your peers.
Yeah. And just so people understand like how that works too, is I think like what isn't really spelled out, and that's what's great about having this conversation with you guys, is like how I would say practically almost everybody that was part of the program last year did not really know each other in depthly. Some people might have met each other briefly, but I think like having this opportunity to be in New York, go out for dinner, hang out, you know, break bread together really was a really special moment to learn about, you know, what a particular manager is going through right now and get insight from another manager on that, and vice versa. There was a lot of breaking bread happening internally that I think really benefited the managers overall. And so that's why I think this program is special in this way, because we don't always get the opportunity, especially within our landscape of Canada, to do that type of networking. I'm going to invite Matt.
Can I add to that?
Yep.
Like, I think because we're part of a group, like all of those things that you said, but also it's like you come to the group with a different emotional investment in everyone else's success, as opposed to like, just, you know, I know a manager, Black manager in Vancouver who's doing X, Y, and Z. Like, we have this group where we're all here with the same mission. And then throughout the year, it's like, if someone has a question or is looking for a contact, like, we have a different, I think, emotional investment in each other's success in that way, that we're supporting each other and helping to each other like reach our goals.
Matt, I'm going to ask you to come if you had any other things you just wanted to throw into the conversation right now, that might not have been highlighted, that you'd like to bring up with Kat and Buck.
No, I think that was a great overview. And I love hearing about things that, you know, the OG Parker thing I didn't know about. And Buck, I'm going to follow up with you with some questions offline, because it's always good to hear about these things, because if we can record them and, even if there's not a dollar value attached to them, it justifies, doing these programs again, and we get the funding for it. So thank
Yeah,
you both.
That's something I'll definitely stress, even with everybody that's watching now. The importance of like communicating with the consulate once you've kind of built the relationship is like the consulate's not just here for this export mission. Like Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, but like people can build relationships with you, and if they're just going to New York on their own, they could reach out to you, and you might be able to help them with some things as well. Correct?
Yep.
Exactly. So that's some real benefits of the consulate. I would like to thank Kat and Buck for being with us today and sharing. I really, 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 really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for having
One
us.
other thing I'll say, Matt, real quick, is just if you could talk about the consul the consultant that you guys hire in helping facilitating bringing the individuals that people are trying to meet and connect with. What's that process like? And yeah, if you could talk a little bit more about that so people understand, like, is it you that is actually doing all this groundwork, or how does it work?
No, I don't. I mean, I don't have all the relationships, so we do bring in other people who have some of those relationships that I don't have. And this year we'll have 2 or 3 people with a network that's a little more current than mine was from my years in the music business, and more relevant to Black managers. So yeah, they'll be
And I
very
think that
involved in the mentoring and the setting up the meetings.
thank you for sharing that. And I think that really is reflective of why, like, why BDRB is involved in this, and why I'm passionate about these type of programs, because I've been involved in export mission programs for many years myself. And very much like Kat was talking about, like sometimes you go to these spaces and they're not really built specifically for our needs and our cultural needs. And so that's what's special about this program, is it's designed to really help the participants that are in it to connect with the people they're trying to connect with. Just so people are aware, last year the program provided 35 speakers, 35 people that connected with the 8 companies that were brought in on the export program. Out of those 35 speakers, 22 of those were on the Billboard Top 100 Power Players. So just to show you the type of players that they're bringing to the table are definitely significant individuals who can help further people's careers. Important dates. We've talked about these dates, obviously just repeating ourselves here. Just the application opens today. It closes on December 17th. The announcement of those participants are January 5th. And there's some onboarding happening in obviously January, and virtual sessions in February, in person in New York in March. And then the songwriting camp, maybe you could just give a brief, what does that look like? I know it's something you're still putting together, but like just so people understand that there's going to be some sort of songwriting camp aligned with this.
Yeah, the idea is basically, and this date I wouldn't, put in stone there for March 7th. I think it's shifting a little, but it'll basically, the idea is to put 6 of the managers, basically each of the managers who's participating, one of their writer producers comes to town. We match them up with New York-based writer producers, and there's a day and a half, 2-day songwriting camp where they can collaborate and hopefully get some material out of it. And I know when we did it last year, some of the collaborations were really successful. They ended up on albums. I think there was maybe a sync placement, or at least it got down the road on a pitch. I don't know if it ended up getting used, but yeah, that's more, I guess where the rubber hits the road for the artists of the managers. So it should be a good.
It's a great opportunity. I mean, the songwriting camp that was done in LA with Export Mission last year was amazing. there was a lot. I think I don't know. I think it was like I think it was like maybe because it was like 3 days and it was I think like 4 different rooms set up and about 15, 16 artists there all together. It was pretty significant and some of those records actually got cut on records that have been released. Like Roy Wood's management was part of the camp and part of the participants last year and I know Roy Wood's new album came out and one of those songs on record is from that camp, you know. So here's some frequently asked questions and next steps for you guys. So you know where you can apply, you can go to www.bdrb.ca/CCA for more details. And can past participants reply? Matt, I'll let you explain that.
They can. I think they would need to demonstrate real growth or changes since last year, just because we only really have room for 6. So we want to make sure that somebody who already participated isn't taking up space for other qualified people. So that's sort of
Gotcha.
a vague answer, but I think it conveys sort of what we're getting at.
Right. And some of the things that are expected of our participants are that they have to obviously complete a post-accelerator survey, just providing feedback for future programs and to collect that important data that you were referring to. Can you talk about a little bit about the costs? Like what, is there a cost to apply for this program and to participate?
There's no cost to apply. There's no cost to participate. The Trade Commissioner Service pays for everything except travel and in-market stuff. So you're responsible for your own cost to attend the New York in-person sessions. It's basically, sort of a minimum of 3 days would be the expectation. We're working on lining up some hotel discount to ease a little bit of the sting. And one of the reasons why we're partnering with MMF Canada is because, like I said earlier, they're doing a trade mission, and they've agreed to take all 6 of the CCA participants to participate in their mission. And as a part of that includes 50% of your flight and a $200 per diem.
Right.
And I think
I'll share that screen now with everybody. Yes, I'd like to thank the MMF. They provided us with this details of how it works for them. So the MMF, if you're not familiar with what the MMF is, it's the Music Managers Forum of Canada. They're a nonprofit trade association and is one of many associations around the world. They also offer education, networking, advocacy on behalf of their members and their artists and wider Canadian music industry. So if you're not familiar with them, I'd highly recommend signing up to the Music Managers Forum. If you're a self-managed artist, you can be there as well. Anyway, their support is going to be through, like Matt was saying, they'll support, and you can find out more details about that at mmfcanada.ca event listings, specifically about their mission. So they have a separate mission that is going on at the exact same time that's going to be held in person in New York on Tuesday, March the 5th to and March the 6th. The participants will be eligible for travel support of 50% of their flight costs and $200 per day travel for a maximum of 4 days. Eligible travel dates are like I said, from Monday, March the 4th to Thursday, March the 7th. That equals a maximum of $800. So reimbursement will take place after the event, and participants will need to attend all MMF mission activities as well as complete a post-event survey and submit their travel accommodation receipts along with an invoice to get paid. So this is a great support for this, especially since it can be very costly to I don't think it's, well, depending on where you're coming from in Canada, it can be very costly on a plane, but I think the hotels is what really gets kind of crazy when you're in New York. But There are other things that I would recommend. I want to share it with people now is if your artist gets into this and if you get into the program and your artist is one of the artists that you want to have part of the songwriting camp, I highly also recommend looking at SOCAM Foundation. So if your artist is a registered songwriter with SOCAN in Canada, they can access travel funds to go towards that. So that's something to look at. And then if you're depending on what provinces you're in, from looking at all the MIAs and what type of travel grants they have accessible to you, I highly recommend looking at those. There's also Factor. Another grant to look at would be the Ontario. If you're based in Ontario, you can look at the OAC. They have a business travel grant as well. So these are all different type of spaces you can look at to offset some of your costs when it comes to this trip. I just want to look in the chat room and see if there was any last minute questions that maybe we did not speak about. So I'm seeing here from Cola, can the consulate facilitate the visa process in a more effectively way than this than the Canadian the CFM, which is Musicians Union in Canada? Matt, do you have an answer?
Unfortunately, we cannot, because that's all the U.S. government, and we don't have anything to do with it.
Okay. I will just try to see what other questions we have here. Does anyone want to throw questions in right away? And that way I can see them at the
I see
bottom as
one.
well. Okay.
If the majority of your metrics are specifically from the US and not from Canada.
I think that could be a benefit, possibly. Am I wrong about that?
Oh, that's good. That's great. As long, again, as long as you're based in Canada, then yeah, it's great to see US activity.
Great. And for those that are new to the industry trying to break in, but don't qualify necessarily, like maybe they don't have a lot of financial metrics or financial, or even just like period to really show what type of strengths they are. Maybe they don't feel that they're ready right now. Is this a program that the consulate is looking to do annually? Is there another one that's going to happen possibly next year? Well,
I mean, we plan on continuing doing these accelerators for the creative industries. We've had genre-based ones, we've had label-based ones, we've had Black manager-based ones. So I don't know, without having a crystal ball and knowing exact, because we don't know what our budgets are going to be yet, and they've cut our budgets. We're committed to the spirit of the program, I would say. So if it's not exactly this program, I think there'll be other programs that you would qualify for. And so, yeah, I'd say don't be discouraged. We'll be back.
What about recently registered businesses? Like if somebody actually went and like registered their business like tomorrow, could they apply?
I mean, as long as it's a legitimate business, yeah.
Good. And what is a legitimate business when you say that?
Again, it has to be a business, a registered business. You got to be operating and based in Canada, and you have to be able to demonstrate that you've had some success, because it really is geared towards managers who are ready to go to the next level. It's really not a sort of level setting or one-on-one type thing. It's really for business expansion.
Got you. And if a business is not registered, does that completely disqualify them? Yes, that is correct.
Yeah.
And is NYC the only time you have to show in person?
Yes.
So yes. So this specific trip is looking only at New York. Can you define success though? That can mean so many things. I think Cola's just wondering like how does somebody really show their success? Um, I
I
mean,
mean,
I
I
think
think
some of it we kind of talked about in regard to the rubrics and also the type of questions that are asked in the application. But maybe you can go a little bit further just to give them a little bit more insight.
well, yeah, I mean, I would definitely think back about those sort of the four categories, your company, your management success, your artist roster success, your US experience, and sort of the relevance of what's been happening recently. I think it's important for you to define what a successful career means to you. Our judges are going to be looking at, you know, I don't think they're saying, okay, well, having 6 million monthly listeners on Spotify is an instant, barometer for success.
Right.
It's there's yeah, I mean, there's not a chart that we're looking at. So I think
There's not necessarily a chart, but there's definitely a rubrics, and that rubrics is basically the criteria that they broke down in terms of how they're judging. And I think that what you have to remember is that it's not just the manager that's being judged, it's the artist as well. Like a manager is as successful as the artist that they have, right? So that's something to think about. If you're self-managed artist, then you really have to sell the fact that you can kind of handle the business, but at the same time, how successful you are as an artist. So you kind of have to sell both those elements to really make it so the judges um can really see that you rise to the top, you know? Um, it's not easy. Last year, out of those 65 applicants, I would say half of them were all great. And so it was really hard to narrow it down. And a lot of it had to come down to making sure that we were having a diverse roster of applicants, meaning people from across Canada, making sure that there's women that are represented. You know what I mean? Like these are all things that have to make sure that are qualifying. If somebody traveling has travel issues, does that disqualify them? I imagine when they say traveling issues, like if you can't get
if you
across a
can't make it,
border, I would say that's a problem, you know?
yeah, I would say if you can't make it, then that's a problem. If you can't make it, but you have a business partner who could come and represent you
Oh, okay.
appropriately and fully, then that's an option. But the expectation is if you miss the in person, then you're missing a huge part of it.
Um, it, when coming across the border, like, does the consulate with the chosen applicants, do they provide like some sort of like, I guess, letter for customs or any support of them coming to New York and that not being an issue? Do you know what I mean?
I
Especially
mean,
the artists that they represent, you know?
we can provide a letter. It's just there's no guarantee that the the CBP officer is gonna care.
Right.
It's that classic thing. If they woke up in a bad mood and they want to flag somebody, they will. But I mean, I don't really know how people last year. I'm sure some people may have just entered as a tourist. Um, but I guess
Gotcha.
it's not like you're performing. So I think that's usually where we run into these issues.
Cool. Well, I that is it for questions. Looks like we got it handled. Any last things you want to share, Matt?
No, the applications are open. And thanks a lot for having me. And hopefully we'll see some of you on the come through with the application.
Great. And if anybody needs any assistance or having a problem with anything, feel free to contact me or Matt at the information below. And have yourself a great weekend. And thanks for being here with us.